Growing with Fish. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast, episode 154. This week we have CheGrown. How's it going?
Great, man. Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I first met him out in Vancouver, and yeah, it was a good time. And he's going to tell us all about some stuff that he's been up to and about his farm. Does a lot of very similar things, a big part of the regenerative movement. And does a lot of similar things to a lot of the other people we've had on the show as far as regenerative soil growing, and he's going to share with us what he does. So it's going to be an awesome talk, and then I think he's got some other things to tell us about too. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And we also have Roger. Roger had to run off for a minute. I'm not sure everyone else is tonight. I guess everybody else is a little bit busy, but I'm sure they'll trickle in as they usually do. And Roger had to run off. He'll be back in a few. So tell us a little about yourself and what you do, buddy.
Sure. Yeah, I'm the founder of Rosebud Cannabis Farms. We're up and coming in BC, Canada. We've just got a confirmation today. We're passed through the next stage of our application process. So we're starting with a nursery, and then we'll be moving into outdoor production. And phase 3 is a product line.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your grow and what you do, as far as how you go about your methodologies.
Yeah, we got a lot of similarities to your group. It's great to be on this podcast, connect with a lot of sort of like-minded people. It's a small circle, this regenerative cannabis community. So we're doing similar things. We're using living soil systems. We're producing a lot of our own amendments on site, trying to reduce our carbon footprint and close loops. We're doing water harvesting and water capturing. I'm a permaculturist and into regenerative agriculture. So we're incorporating a lot of those concepts into cannabis production. We're using geothermal heating and cooling. We intend to produce all of our own electricity on site, a combination of solar and biomass units. And really the goal here is to be one of the lowest impact cannabis production sites in Canada. And that's a huge thing when you consider how much energy it takes on average to produce cannabis. And we've been looking at some statistics here. As an example, for 1 kilogram of cannabis in an indoor warehouse production is equivalent to 7 to 10 barrels of oil for the energy it takes to actually produce that. So it's not sustainable. And we're trying to demonstrate a better way. Better way mean more profitable, better for the environment, and potentially a better product. So really it's a win-win-win. We're happy to be able to demonstrate that as we transition into these better growing methods as time goes on.
So what are some of the different organic amendments that you make for your garden? I know a lot of people are interested in kind of what their toolbox is, and what are some of the things that you use, or maybe and tell us about that.
Sure. We're trying to move away from purchased amendments and actually produce more on site. So alfalfa is a real big one. We do some bioaccumulators, nettles, of course, is really popular, comfrey. We do some vermi composting on site. Wood chips, we're using wood to actually create electricity, waste wood from the lumber industry. That's our intention anyway. And so we're composting wood on site as well. And then that in turn does some carbon capturing to push us towards carbon neutral or eventually, hopefully, carbon negative.
Awesome. Is there any other amendments that you're using, or?
Yeah, we're doing cover crops. Clover is really popular. We're mixing it up, trying to use some attractants and some polyculture kind of stuff like you'd see in a guild. We're trying to use rice hull. We don't like to use perlite. I think it takes a lot of energy to produce, and it's not really sustainable. So we use rice hull for the most part for our aeration to help give us some better aggregate in our soils. And really, we're trying to source things locally as much as possible and make sure that it's organic. Glyphosate is a real big issue these days. We're really taking big steps to make sure we can keep that off of our property.
So you live up in the Kootenays part of Canada. Tell us a little about the culture and the history of that as far as cannabis goes up there, because it's been part of the culture up there a long time, like it is in some parts of the United States.
Yeah, it sure has. We've actually only been in the Kootenays for about 10 years now, but the locals have been really welcoming. It seems like definitely the epicenter of cannabis production in Canada. So we got a lot in common. It really is ingrained into the Kootenays. I remember when I first got there, I was talking to some strangers, people I'd never met before, and they started to unload plants out of their truck and just move them into the house. And from that time, I was from Alberta, and it just blew my mind that it was so open and accepted there. That was my first real awakening to cannabis in the Kootenays and how it's different.
I was lucky enough to have my first exposure view of the dragonflies, so I'm a little bit spoiled on my exposure to the Kootenays, but yeah, it's a really wonderful state. Tell us a little bit about the climate there compared to the rest of Canada.
We're in this desert belt, the same desert belt that goes up into the Okanagan. So we get pretty mild winters. We do get a lot of snow in the winter, but quite mild compared to a lot of the rest of Canada, and really hot, dry, sunny summers. So I think this is the reason that the Kootenay cannabis is recognized, or BC Bud is recognized internationally, is that great climate that we have. It's a good altitude, similar to that of Colorado, where we have a less atmosphere. So that way we can get a little more strength out of the sun, a little more energy. So yeah, it really does grow high quality outdoor cannabis, and that was what brought us to the area. That was the big attractor for us. We're focused on sun grown and outdoor production.
What are some of the different cultivars you're finding work good up in Canada? I know with the shorter season, especially, you need to use stuff that kind of hurries the hell up once it gets into flower. So, what are some of the stuff that you're growing, and then maybe some other ways that you're handling them?
Exactly, yeah. The first cannabis I ever saw, or the first cultivar that made me think outdoor is a strong possibility, was actually seaweed. And seaweed has been in the Kootenays for a long time. I mean, I'm sure it's been the bulk of outdoor production in the Kootenays for a long time. For years, it was passing off as indoor, although it was growing outdoors in the rest of Canada anyway. And so people have started to catch on now, but that really showed me the potential of outdoor, and that started me down this path of incorporating rudorellis or autoflower genetics. So in my opinion, there is rudorellis in seaweed. It's hard to keep a mom. It wants to flower. You got to keep transplanting it, keep the nitrogen high. Um, and then it moved on to some other local strains. Polecat's one that does really well in the area. Um, Recently, apricot kush has become really popular. We've really been working on our own genetics for the past decade, really focused on outdoor production in Canada. Knowing the Health Canada tests are so strict, I think that we're going to see a lot of failed crops here in the future. And so, picking the cultivars that are resistant to pathogens that are going to help us pass those tests has been very high on the list. And also knowing a lot of this outdoor product is going to go to extraction, so we started to look at it from that viewpoint. For example, it's not necessarily the amount of THC per the gram or per the bud. It's more about total cannabinoids per foot. When you start looking at extraction, you start looking at outdoor field production. And then, like you said, early finishers is key. Autoflowers, a lot of potential in that. We can maybe get 2, potentially 3 harvests off per season. Really, right now, we've got a couple strains that are September finishers, and we're really excited about moving forward with.
What's the latest date? What date do you have to have everything in by up there?
Honestly, you can get into the end of June and still be fine. We like to start planting at the end of May. You could probably even sneak into the first week of July and still have a successful harvest. But we do get short season. November 1st, the snow comes like clockwork every year, and that's the end of it. October is pretty wet, pretty cold. It's not ideal. September is still pretty good. If you can finish off in September, we're definitely finding better quality products for sure.
So, what are maybe some things that you do that are a little unique, or maybe things that you've learned on, along your path, or things that you've discovered that work really well in your particular area?
Well, that's a good question. We don't have the humidity that we get on the coastal region, so we're a little less impacted by powdery mildew and botrytis and things like that. Russet mites or hemp mites, big problem. I know Josh and Kelly talk about this as well, but we've had a bad infestation, and of course we deal with it with biological, so we use predator mites to deal with that. But I've seen it pretty much every garden I've gone to recently through my circle of friends, that everybody has the same symptoms. So it's a real outbreak right now, a real problem, and people are trying to find out ways to deal with that.
What species are you using for the?
We're using Swarovski. We're using those foil sachets as well, so we get about 6 weeks life out of them. We have to replace them. They seem to work really well if you can get them on your babies right from the start. You know, if you've already have a problem and try and add them later, they seem to work, but it's difficult to keep it under control at that point. So it's more about prevention and getting on it early, really.
So we had a question from chat. Where are you getting your bugs from?
Right now we're using optimized organic, although we've gone a couple of different routes in the past.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, we were talking about that the other. Steve was talking about how he's introduced mites into his grow that the predator mites will eat and continue to have a food source. The other night.
We didn't introduce them intentionally. They just ended up there.
Nice. That's the ultimate goal, right? To establish a colony, have them reproduce.
Yeah, we have Tryphagus mites in our nursery, which are feeding because we dose so much IMO and so much labs in our system, and we have some mushroom block in there. So we end up with like this, immense amount of fungal activity in our soil in our upper half of our root zone in the dual root zone pots. And the Tryphagus mites have been feeding on those, but we noticed the hyperaspis or the H miles, or what did they change it to? Is it Neosuillus miles now? Or is it? No, it's not Neosuillus. What is it? What's the new hyperaspis miles? The new one is Stratioliptes miles, maybe. I'm sure if Suzanne's listening to this, she's cringing.
Yeah, for sure.
But somebody in chat help me out here. Come on.
Yeah, I haven't checked out chat. Let me close out. Let me talk and keep up with chat.
That's all right.
We're using Californicus for our two-spotted mites, and that's awesome. It's nice to not have to worry about two-spotted mites anymore. I don't know if you guys are like me, but I've dealt with these things for a long, long time on and off. It's nice to be able to not worry about that anymore.
Yeah, Californicus and Prisimilis are really, really, really good for two-spotted spider mites.
Yeah.
Like the best. I know that we're going to be putting out Prisimilis and Androsonii and what the hell? There's a third one that we got. I don't remember. I'll have to go look at the sheet. That we're going to be putting out all in our outdoor, and then we're going to be putting in the Androsonii and all of our babies.
Right.
So, although I guess Suzanne's changed her mind on some of that, I guess more recently on which one's the best one. So, hopefully we'll be able to get her on here soon, and she can correct us on that.
It's an interesting space to be in. There's so much evolving. We're learning so much about living soils and predators and this whole regenerative cannabis thing. It's exciting. There's lots to learn every day, something new.
Absolutely. So what are is there anything else that you guys have noticed in particular in your as far as any other cultivars or anything patterns in cultivars that you've noticed as far as what grows really well at that particular climate?
Yeah, just we're trying to work with stuff that's been acclimatized. It's been in this area for a number of years. If not, we're trying to find things that are already well suited, that are already acclimatized from another region that's similar, I guess you could say. I think that's really important. We see a lot of issues when we take genetics from different regions. Most of the time, it's going to at least take some adapting, a couple of years for it to acclimatize and do well in our region. So I think there's definitely a lot of value to picking genetics that are from your region or something at least similar, especially if you want something to be to produce well your first time around.
Awesome. So tell us about some of the other stuff you got going on up there.
We got a lot going on. We're reaching out to the community. We're doing a little cannabis event. At this point, it's going to be private because there isn't permitting in place to make this a public event. But we have been talking to the regional district and beyond, and we hope next year that there is a path to do that. So this year, it's just going to be relatively small, kind of a friends, family invite only, maybe about 150 people. But the idea is actually a cannabis celebration. Part of that being a comparison. Some people will call it a cannabis cup. But beyond that, we want to actually make it an educational event where people can come and learn about living soil systems, regenerative cannabis, and a way to produce with less impact. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I think that we're at that point now when it's a win-win-win. We can actually produce the same or more quantity of potentially better quality for a fraction of the price. And I think that speaks to everybody, from the mom and pop operations all the way up to the big corporations. It's just starting to really make sense. And so we want to demonstrate that. We want to spread that word. Yeah, and just a celebration of cannabis, period. Especially we've moved into this new place of legalization. And I think that it's being accepted more by the common folk, and they're looking to understand more about cannabis and cannabis production as well. So we hope we can present a venue for a good cannabis time and some education as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm gonna trying to make my way up there. I think I'm gonna be at that one. So, barring
Awesome.
anything crazy happening, I'll be up there.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to have you.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Go up see you. Gives me an excuse to go up to Dragonfly's farm. You know, the end of the summer and see their amazing place. See your spot and see all kinds of awesome stuff up there. So it'll be a good time for sure.
Yeah, excellent.
That's why I decided I've got to get out of here and I got to get at least in the Midwest or somewhere where I can go. I'm so sick of all my friends going to all these great conferences and meeting with all my other friends every month.
Well, you're invited too, Roger. We hope you see you up here.
Yeah.
Oh man, if I could, well, I got to get one of them cards that get me past the Patriot Act type shit. I let my license expire because I'm legally blind, and due to that, they won't let me in the DMV to get an ID, which would allow me to get the kind of ID would allow me to fly. So when we went to Michigan, we had to cancel the plane tickets and drive up there. You know, so it's a long drive from me to you. It's a really long drive, but one day, I don't know, I got this really awesome camper. Maybe we'll get some friends and make a West Coast. We'll just do a trip cross country and visit everybody we know all the way across, you know, because I don't have anybody to answer to. You know, I get my disability check and my pay from my online, you know, activities, and I could go anywhere in the country and still get paid. So, yeah. Or in Canada or anywhere in North America.
Excellent.
Cool. So what are is there any other people that are going to be talking there? Is there any other info you want to share with that yet, or just kind of in the early stages?
Yeah, we haven't nailed anything down. We're in talks with a lot of different people. Some of them you know of. In fact, maybe you're one of the speakers. We'll see how that goes. See if you're interested. But again, the idea is just to educate people on a more sustainable growing practices. So everybody in that community with knowledge would be a candidate to come and talk. We like to do a seed exchange. We're going to do a pig roast and have some entertainment there, and really just try and make it, like I say, a real celebration of cannabis and a lot of like-minded people at the same place, a lot of networking and connections going on, especially next year. Like I say, private this year, but we got big plans as time goes on to have a premier regenerative cannabis style event.
Sorry about that noise there. I think we got it.
That sounds incredible there. That does sounds like a real thing. Up in that area, if you're up there close to Josh and Kelly, that I saw some of the pictures from that, and yeah, I want to go up there and hang out with them too. You know, so yeah,
Cool.
I could have a month vacation up there in Vancouver or British Columbia for sure.
Yeah, a pretty unique piece of property too. We're at the end of a dead end road. Beautiful little lake up there, surrounded by crown land, mountains, and wildlife. We got loons and painted turtles and eagles and all that stuff, you know. So we're to tell you the truth, every day I wake up out there is a day I have something to be grateful about.
Are you lucky? Do you have any flowing water, like streams or small river through the property, or just on the lake?
Yeah, we actually have a few properties up there. We have a year-round spring that runs through the center of one of them. Our long-term plans with that property are actually a sort of a eco community type thing,
Yeah.
and that'll house some of the employees for our cannabis production as well. It fits along the whole theme. The whole theme we're trying to put forward is low impact, um, low carbon footprint, people traveling to work, and then producing our own food as much as possible, and sort of things like that. This sort of closed loop way of looking at things.
Yeah, there was a place like that. Well, see, I'm big into the running water thing. If I found a piece of land out there, I'd have to have a stream or something because I really want to try using in hydropower, and that's why I asked about that. The idea that you could use hydropower because you got like Steve and them have that out on that farm in Oklahoma. They actually have a place there where there's running water, where you could produce hydropower, and that's what I've really been wanting to do for 20 years. But the community, there's one in North Carolina. I cannot think of what it's called right now, but it's the same kind of deal. Everybody has to live in like a 10 by 20 house, or like very small footprint houses. And it's all self-sustainable, and they have their own, everybody works for the community, and they have like a deal. All the, where you eat is a main, like a hall. They have all in the center of the community. So all cooking and eating is done in there. So you don't need a kitchen in your cabin. And it's really cool. I love that kind of idea.
Cool.
So what are some of the other things that make the grow scene up there unique? What are some of the different processing that you're doing, and how do you go about maybe drying and curing your stuff before you process it?
Well, I guess it depends what we're going to end up using it for. The drying and curing, I think, is probably the same that all you guys do, is low and slow. Cool temperatures and nice and slow gives you the better terpene profile in the end, right? So we do a lot of ice water extract for personal use. We're running a MMAR license since 2013 for several patients on our neighboring property, and so we do a lot of ice water extract on that. I love the fresh frozen. I love the taste that we get out of that, and the flavors, and of course the clean product, generally speaking, a lot of melt factor going on. So that's one of my favorite. We stay away from the hydrocarbons. It doesn't really fit into to our niche so much. If we're looking for like a shatter type product, that's going to come from rosin. In fact, our rosin, we like to actually make bubble hash and then squish that into rosin. You're not going to quite get as much out of it, but in my opinion, you're getting a premium quality.
That's what Steve likes to do, man. Like
right on.
He does the hash. He makes the hash, then squeezes the hash to make his rosin. Or at least that's what he was doing for a while. There's no telling with Steve.
Yep.
He probably figured out some new space age way to make it better. Or if he
always working on stuff for sure. But still, like, I think nothing really beats that quick wash, freeze dry, especially if you have a freeze dryer. Freeze dry it overnight, squish it the next day. Man, it tastes so good. Yeah. Especially if you just cut the plant down and immediately bubble it. Like, don't even give it a chance to, just to cut it down, immediately ice hash it, take those trikes off and make that live rosin.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, exactly. That's my favorite. When it comes to flower, my little trick, and it's not like I'm the only person doing this, but one of my favorite things to do is pick my favorite plant, put it into a cold, dark closet right in the pot, so the pot's probably going to be pretty close to dry. I might even be starting to wilt the plant a little bit. But then just shove that in a dark, cool closet in the basement and come back, 6 weeks later kind of thing. Let it die real slow. It seems to really sweat out the crystal, trying to hold in the moisture as a defense mechanism. And then along with keeping the roots intact, that's some of the best cured flower that we've ever done. That's my favorite way to do personal.
Wow. So you don't even hang it. You just let it dry out in a dark, cold closet.
Yeah, right in the living soil. If it's in a pot, you just move the whole thing into the dark, cool closet. If the pot is too wet, it's gonna, in our experience, it takes too long for the plant to die and dry. So I like to get it in there, when the pot's pretty dry, drier than you would normally get it, for sure. So a day or two later, it's starting to wilt and die. But like I say, it just seems to take way longer to get to the ideal humidity, which is like, instead of 2 weeks or whatever it is, we're looking more like 4 or 6 kind of thing.
Interesting. I like that. I've tried that before, and I've never been committed to do it like you're doing it there. And now I can see how there might be a difference. But every time I've had a plant that I let slowly, die in the pot, it seemed to have a taste that just a little too earthy for my taste, or that. So, but I can see how that. But you basically almost water stress it before you put it in the cold dark room, is what you're saying. So
Yeah.
that's sure a lot of people out there are going to be interested in that. That's pretty neat.
We had some stuff in chat. It says, how do you guys find temperature being an issue for bubble? Have a temperature you won't go above when processing? Actually, a lot of people I know, and if I have the option, I'll do this. Generally, you're taking your plants down in October or November in most of the U.S. Not everywhere, but most of the U.S. And by then you're going to take them down. You're probably going to dry them for 2 to 4 weeks. So that's going to move you into November, December. Generally, it's pretty cold out by then. So you can either hit up your backyard on a nice cool dry day, on a cold dry day, or you can go in your garage on a nice cold dry day, and just do your thing out there in anywhere between 32 and 33 degrees and 55 degrees. I would say is ideal. The colder it is, the better it's going to be, and the less sticky it's going to be. So if you have the option, if you're going to build a lab to do this kind of stuff, you're going to have that lab around 40, 45 degrees for the space. You're going to do bubble hash on any kind of large scale. But again, you're going to get an extra little percentage of yield that way.
Yeah, right on. That's what we do too. I mean, we're so busy in the fall that we end up getting the bubble hash done in the winter anyway. So we just set up out in the backyard in the snow and the ice and paddle away.
Yep, that's the easier way to do it. And then we have speed of drying versus picking early trichome development, amber percentage. That entirely depends on what it is you're trying to do with that product.
Yep.
If you're trying to make like really showy rosin, you're going to pick that early. If you're going to try and get higher CBD percentage, you're going to pick it way early. Wade Laughter was talking about up to 2 weeks early.
Yep.
For peak, 1 to 2 weeks earlier for peak CBD. So this really depends. Now, if you want a really clear solvent or not solvent, a really clear extract or something like that, or really blonde, again, pick early. If you don't care and you want a more rounded off one, pick it a 50-50 or a 40-60, one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But remember that CBN is red, and it's going to darken up your stuff, as well as some other cannabinoids. Delta 8, I believe, also is a darker color just by default. So, just because something's darker doesn't mean it's bad. It's one thing that really frustrates me when you hear people talk about extracts is it needs to be clear, it needs to be blonde. Really? Why? Because you don't understand how this whole system works, or because you've heard that and it's hype right now? It's just stupid.
For sure, yeah. Baggy peels seem to be the number one concern these days, which is a shame. You see some of these what we call ugly looking landrace strains come down, and you see that on Instagram. People say, why do you post a picture of that swag? But the truth is, if you were to smoke that swag, quote unquote, it'd knock you on your ass. So it's definitely not all about looks, right?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought you were done. All right.
Well, I was just thinking back to bubble hash. Like personally, I like it nice and greasy, nice and oily. So we get to know the different cultivars and when the most oil is present and try and pick it at that point.
Yeah, we had Vision Creator on a couple of weeks ago, and he's all he does is land races. He doesn't do anything else. And he talks about how ugly the plant is, but then you smoke it and you trip your ass off.
Yeah, for sure.
And he literally means you're tripping your ass off too. He doesn't mean
especially some of those Southeast Asian strains, and stuff like that. They get real fluffy, and they don't really get that stereotypical nug structure, but they smoke really good.
Yeah. I think it's important to keep your intended use in mind as well. Like some of this outdoor stuff, we're actually selecting open bud structure, which is against the norm at this point. When it comes down to it, we're getting less infection, less pathogen that way, and we're able to still get a high amount of extraction per square foot. So, it doesn't really necessarily matter of how it looks. It matters is your intention and the end product and how it works for that.
That's pretty neat. That comes up. Yeah, that's funny how things keep coming up from different people. How everybody's adapting and kind of finding a medium, a middle ground on all of this stuff that is making better quality for everybody. Because, like you said, like Steve said, I understand. I've seen a lot of that too, where people are talking about the more clear, like especially going back to when people were preaching doing the honey oil with the butane, and they were talking about, and if you want clear, you got to do this, but you don't really get clear. It's a, you're taking you're using buds to make that honey oil that was light, that was golden or whatever. It wasn't necessarily younger or anything. You're just not using the leaves as opposed to using trim or whatever to make the less potent stuff, but still very good medicine. But I think that's where that belief came from, was the old days of, well, they were looking at the quality of the honey oil, and it had to do with, that really was whether you're using buds or whether you're using trim.
I think a lot of it just comes from that company, the Clear or whatever, hyping the shit out of it, and people, and then distillate companies pushing it because it's like one of the cheapest, lowest quality products that's out there. You can make it out of pesticide-ridden stuff. I mean, we had Mike West on a couple of weeks ago talking about that. And so they just tried to hype it up to try and give it some more value, even though it's kind of not really worth the same as the other ones. So I think that's where a lot of it comes from.
It's a shame.
I guess I have an ignorance to that because I'm not in a place where I haven't been able to practice all these things. Because if they saw you with any kind of rig like that, it'd be like they'd think you're cooking meth no matter what you said. So I stay away from doing any kind of extractions or anything that looks like you're doing a lab. If they want to come get me for growing a couple of pot plants in my room, then that's what they can do. And that's going to be minimal effect of my life. But they come in and see any kind of lab situation, you're going to spend a fortune just to prove to them that it's not a meth lab, because they're as ignorant as, the next. I mean, there's some smart guys in law enforcement, but your guys on the ground are just about as ignorant as it comes when it comes to that kind of, because they're not studying this into industry and what goes on with it. And so I'm glad I'm kind of ignorant to that Clear and all that stuff, and really have gotten to learn how to do things from old school organic people, as opposed to relying on buying something, whether it's cheap or not. I'm not interested. I want to find out how to do it myself in the simplest way, which is why I love the fresh frozen and all that. Like you're talking about the fresh frozen, all that's probably as far as I'd go in trying to do any kind of extracting or any kind of squishing or anything like that. I don't even want to press rosin yet because we're so far behind the line as far as legality goes, so.
Sure. Yeah. Even things like, for example, topicals, we're finding there's no need to extract it with the hydrocarbon and then add it back. That seems to be the norm. We're actually having better success with using stuff like organic coconut base and decarbing at the same time as we simmer our flour, our trim in that to extract it.
Yeah, you read my mind. Coconut oil.
Yeah, good squeeze after with some cheesecloth to get the last little bits out of there, and it works great. It's clean, it's not dangerous, it's healthy. It just seems to be a win-win.
Yeah, especially for topicals, when you're doing your infusion in the coconut oil, put it in mason jars and pressure cook it. And you put a little lecithin and a little emu oil in there too, and it'll really get it through that skin.
Oh, right on. Yeah, good one.
You can take the lecithin after you've done the coconut oil. You take the lecithin and you get one of those milkshake or like mayonnaise, the Dremels. I don't know what the little mixers you stick in the top, and you can make mayonnaise, and you mix the lecithin and whip it all up, and it makes it way stronger, more microbiologically available to your cells.
Oh, interesting. That's good.
Anyway, hey Tara, just to say hi. Tara dropped in.
Hi Tara.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I was out in the garden doing my garden chores. It's still light here, so I'm like, it's hard to make this thing at 6:30.
Yeah. Come live on the East Coast, and then it's 9:30.
Well, and finally, like the sun finally starts to cool off, right? Like I don't want to be out there every day.
Yeah.
So, well, good evening. How are y'all doing tonight? How's everybody doing?
Great, thanks. Great.
It's been a fun show. Yeah, very informative so far.
Awesome.
Do you know Che? Che's from Rosebud Farms up in British Columbia.
Yeah, we met up at the Regenerative Conference
cool.
in Vancouver.
All right, so we're all on the same page, and so now we can do what everybody wants to do.
So do you do any KNF stuff or any fermented amendments or anything like that?
You know what? That's where we're headed right now. I don't, but well, I do a little bit, but we got a lot to learn, and that's really our focal point at this point. We see big advantages, we see it working, but we just haven't explored it deep enough to incorporate it yet. But it's coming. It's coming for sure.
It's not as scary as it seems either. And I've talked to people that don't follow the direction, so to speak, and they're using it. So I've been doing a few methods. I've been making some labs and some fermented plant juice, and I got my OHN, and I'm in the process of doing my IMO. But it's not as scary as it seems to be, and I feel it's really safe because I've talked to people when they recommend 1 to 1,000, and they're going, well, I'm doing it like 1 to 20 or 1 to 50, and they didn't kill their plants. They thought they still got good effects from it, which, you know, I want to stay closer to the benchmark when I'm beginning to do something. I want to stay with what the masters teach and then maybe change it later as I might think. And even Steve's got enough experience with it now where he has made some changes for certain aspects or certain situations where you would make it stronger. But the fact that I know somebody that made it extremely strong, like super extreme strong, and it didn't kill anything. And again, I think it goes back to the plant only uptakes what it wants to uptake. And since it's in an organic, you know, so what I consider a safe organic, what's the word I'm looking for? It's applied, you know, the way it's applied, I think it's a very safe way to do it. So it's not as scary and so, you know, with the labs of fermented plant juice, it's so easy to make and so quick that you can actually implement that and I've had everybody I've had that use labs and fermented plant juice just alone without anything else said they saw marked advantages in their plants within a week or so, you know. So
yeah,
you know, it's pretty cool.
We do play with it, to tell you the truth. We do sort of controlled studies, I guess you could say. I like to make lots of mistakes, but just keep them small. It's an opportunity to learn, and then you didn't have a big loss, you know. So we're playing a little bit with fermented. I've been playing with the fermented teas for a long time.
Yeah,
and it's amazing how well the plants respond to something that's so anaerobic. I know Josh and Kelly are big into anaerobic and then go aerobic. For the most part, our teas, we stay aerobic, but obviously it works very well to do both and even anaerobic. So we've got a lot to learn. We've been playing with bokashi a little bit. We seem to have some good results with it. We're just not at the point yet when we're confident enough to move it into the full production.
Right. Well, that's smart. That's smart. Yeah, you don't want to try something new when you got something working. You definitely don't want to try something new, and it could possibly not go right for you. And on a quick note, one thing about Chris Trump, he's always said to all of us, and he says in his videos, if you do something any of the Korean natural farming methods and you fail, send him an email, you know, and tell him what you did, and he'll try to figure out what happened and give you some advice. You know, he's good about that kind of thing. He's always looking for, because it's like you said, you have to fail. You know, if you always do it just perfectly and you don't ever experiment, you don't really know what happens. You know, it's if you don't try it a different way, and then you can see how it hurts it or it helps it. But you know, either way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The IMO is something we're definitely interested in. It doesn't make sense to keep adding microorganisms that aren't indigenous, because then you just have to keep adding them. But at the same time, we're seeing some incredible effects happening with specific combinations of microorganisms. You know, some companies up there doing some research right now that are having some big results. And so we're looking for ways to repeat that with more of the indigenous microorganism side of things. But we're just not quite there yet. But we're definitely looking forward to getting to that point.
Cool.
Awesome. So is there any other, topics you wanted to bring up in regards to cannabis or cannabis growing? I kind of give you the floor to talk about anything you're kind of passionate about or think you're concerned about in the industry.
Well, to tell you the truth, in our community up in the Kootenays here, it's so ingrained into the culture, into the community. It's pretty sad to see a lot of people losing that opportunity, and that's what's happening, unfortunately. It's quite difficult to get into the regulated system. There's a lot of hoops to jump. The application process is difficult. It's quite costly. Limited footprint. We're looking at 2,000 square feet for a micro grow. And with the prices the way they are, by the time you actually accomplish that and have product for sale, it can be difficult to even be profitable, especially if we're talking about high energy indoor type production. It just doesn't seem to be a good choice. Doesn't seem to make sense. And so what we're seeing is a lot of these mom and pop operations shut their doors, and that's sad. That really affects our whole community. In the Kootenays, I can't give you the exact number, but a huge portion of the funding that moves around in the Kootenays is cash that's come from cannabis production traditionally or in the past. So to see that change, it's pretty sad. And then outdoor prices have dropped. So I've heard from $2,000 a pound at one point down to a few $100s. I mean, I've heard pounds going for $400 at this point. So people aren't bothering to do it anymore. Why would they jeopardize themselves, potentially incarceration and theft and all the other issues that come with it on the gray market for to break even or to hope to break even. So we're really seeing things change. I hope the government lax up a little bit and relaxes some of these regulations and makes it easier for these smaller cultivators to be involved. We definitely intend to support the community if we can, but it's going to take the government making it a little bit easier for us to be able to do that.
Weren't they planning on making it making the regulations more lax progressively in Canada? Wasn't that part of the plan? They're really kind of tough now, but they have already said they're going to ease up a little bit on certain restrictions down the road.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, one quote I can think of is Bill Blair said, we can't start with less rules and add more later. We have to start with lots of rules, and then it's easier to take rules off. So I hope so. I hope that's what we're going to see. In fact, I hope we see that everybody that has surplus is able to sell that through a legal route one way or another, whether that's personal production licenses, MMAR licenses, or micro growers. Really at the end of the day, this is a plant, right? And I think it's easy to overlook that, especially with the stigma that's been attached for so long. That's the devil's lettuce and reefer madness. At the end of the day, why is this any different than a tomato or any other plant? So I think sometime down the future, we're going to see that, but I have a feeling it's going to be a slow progress.
Yeah, I know. Applied for a license up there in Alberta last May, I think it was. So, and we're still in process. So, I'm sure you applied around the same time or earlier.
Yeah, we applied in March, and we just got our confirmation today that we've been to pass the high-level review. So the system's changed actually up here. In the past, you apply, you're looking at 12 to 18 months till your application comes back and you make amendments to it. You have your building built at this point. Now, actually, we were grandfathered in. We got in before this change happened, thankfully for us. But now you have to actually have your facility completely built before you can even apply. And so the reasoning behind that is there's a backlog of applications. I guess there's over 700 applications, and the majority of those never actually build a building, but in fact, they just look to sell their application. The government decided that this would be the best way to deal with that issue. I'm not going to comment one way or another if I think it's better or not, but at the end of the day, it's easy to see that it makes it even more difficult for the small guys to move into this space. It's hard enough to get funding for a project, but even that much harder if you can't put an application in first.
Yeah, I know it's been really wild being through that. I know a lot of small farms, how would you, you'd be sitting there waiting for your license and not even know if you should plant your, for the season, and you could end up taking off a season and cost you your farm, and I'm sure it is for people. Sitting here still waiting on a license. So, they need to just issue temporary permits and then do the whole licensing process, not force everyone to wait and cause this kind of crazy bullshit.
Yeah, that would be great.
That's what a sane market would do, is get the market going, put testing regimens in, and then go through and say, hey, we're going to issue final permits, but, we'll issue the temporaries for now. So, but they don't do that and Canada's completely screwed itself out of the international market. Canada really was set up in the beginning and could have been the international marketplace for cannabis. and they've done nothing but try to screw that up every way, every chance they can. I mean, look at how completely asinine the edibles restrictions are. You know, and the concentration, 10 milligrams per package, completely ridiculous. And, you know, that's totally unreasonable. Like what's a cancer patient supposed to do? You know, just get cases? Like, they're going to buy it by the pallet? Like, what the?
Yeah, and I really think ignorance is to blame for that. Ignorance meaning just not educated, just not knowing any better. So as these rule makers start to use themselves and understand really what it takes, I think we're going to see those change. You know, but like I say, there's a lot of people that haven't really moved into cannabis or dabbled with it yet. And as they're starting to educate themselves, then I think we'll see the rules reflect that.
What seems like the problem, like what you're talking about, I think the biggest problem of it is even though all these people have applied and they're all professional growers and they know they're professional growers, they never include them in implementing any of these regulations or using the common sense between a farmer and the government. There's no liaison. There's nobody in the middle expediting this in order to make it reasonable and smart and economical for everybody. It's just a bunch of guys that are 65 to 75 years old making laws that never smoked a joint in their life, you know, and they never farmed in their life, much less smoke a joint, I should say, because they're not farmers. You know, they're not even, you know, consulting farmers because it's cannabis. So they don't even look at regular farmers to consult, which is they look at how they screwed up all the farmers all over the place. And they're doing the same thing with cannabis growers.
Yeah, I agree. That's true. You know, there's definitely a lot of issues in cannabis all over, getting better all the time. But at the end of the day, I think it's easy to forget that we are making some progress, that cannabis is legal here. And that's a huge milestone. That's something to be super thankful and appreciated about. You know, as time goes on, we can fine tune it. But I think sometimes, myself included, it's easy to get focused on the issues and how they could have done it better, and then forget really that such a milestone has happened, that it actually is legal now. I mean, that's huge. We've been dreaming about this for our whole lives. My old man always used to tell me, one day cannabis will be legal. And I think, you know, Pops, I don't think so. But here we are. So it's a happy day.
For sure. Despite, and I say this a lot of people, and no offense to all my friends, because I'm trying to get in the industry myself now because it's so much out there. But I tell people at my age, we haven't been looking to make $1 million off of cannabis our whole life. I'm in my 60s. We've been looking to be able to have it legal so we could grow it and smoke it. And so sometimes when I hear people that got into, you know, I feel I have empathy for anybody that got into business that's not working out. But that's like any business. Everybody wants to open a restaurant, but 80% of those fail in the first year, you know, and that's the same thing I think happening with the cannabis industry. Steve and I talk about it all the time. There's so many people. The reason there's so many good jobs out there because there's so many people that have the money to start a cannabis farm, but they have no clue of what to do on a cannabis farm. Once they get once they spend all their money and have their licenses and all in order and their you know, greenhouses or whatever, you know, set up, you know, they have no idea of standard operating procedure and other things that you have to do and have to think forward on, you know.
For sure. The biggest thing I think that people overlook is these prices aren't going to hold forever. And we have an advantage. We can look what's happening down where you guys are south of the border and use that model to predict that's going to happen here. I mean, it's just the way it plays out. And what's happening is a race to the bottom at this point. So how do you be competitive when your production prices are through the roof? So we're still seeing the majority of these operations that are applying as indoor, high intensity, high energy consumption facilities, which means high production costs. And it's just not in my opinion, a plan for longevity. So I think that's the biggest problem with a lot of these setups and why they're not going to be successful looking long term.
I was thinking that same thing, and you actually hit it on the head. You're actually going there already. You said you know some people that are having to, the price of their pounds are down to $400, so they're closing their doors. Well, we already have friends in Washington. Well, we have one particular good friend of the show, Josh, that has the cannabis conference. Him and Leighton have the Regenerative Organic Cannabis Conference, and he's got the same problem. He had 1,000 pounds and he couldn't sell them because it was down to like $200 to $400 a pound, $600 a pound. You know, that's not what he grew it for. You know, he didn't grow it for that.
The price in California has gone up quite a bit.
How's it going up in Cali? So
Yeah, it's actually stabilizing in Cali and Oregon. But again, summer's coming around, so that's also partially normal for the season, and also partially because the biggest thing, in my opinion, is just consumer education. People know the difference between good and bad weed now. They're not really, overjoyed about just having a $40 ounce of weed, and they're actually going out and looking for something that's good, or the specific terpene or cannabinoid profile that they want, and that's allowing the room for the cottage industry to kind of get the prices back up a little bit, because they're the only ones really catering to that market.
And also, once it dust settles a bit, there's always going to be craft growers that grow better, and you're going to get more money for your product if you've got the best quality, cannabis or whatever you extract from it on the market. You're going to get the extra money eventually. The low quality will be weeded out. It'll be sold cheaply because it's just like it always been. Really, you buy low, like. I was alive when you could get a pound for $200, $250, but that was killer, and you sold it for $35 an ounce. You bought a quarter pound for $100, $110. The whole thing was you sell 3/4 for 35 and you get one for free. Then all of a sudden, overnight, bam, what's this? A cellophane, hermetically sealed cellophane package with a 1/4 ounce of one bud in there. And it was like Sensimelia. That was $35. All of a sudden, you went from an ounce for 35 to this one bud for 35, and then we went to where we're at 2,000 a pound, and the market changed, legalization changed a lot of stuff because it flooded the market with so many people growing and all, and we knew that was going to happen. But just like you said, even if you're not a commercial grower, at some point, even home growers are going to, because you have to pay attention. There's some people that are going to get into growing that are going to quit growing eventually too. Even though they're growing now, they're not going to grow forever because it's actually work. We all know that a lot of people don't like to work. So.
I think you're going to see that, like in Oklahoma, everyone's panicking because the number of licenses issued. But first off, I would say at least 20 to 25% of the people that have a license are not even going to get a harvest that's sellable. Like botrytis and powdery mildew is rampant out here because of the flooding. The humidity level here has been high for a month and a half, like literally like just rain, or I have pools of water around the house. The river near our house went from being normally long enough you could probably swim across it in a normal in a minute or two, wide but not that wide, to being 2 or 3 miles wide. So just the humidity is just radical. So it's something that you have to, a lot of these people aren't prepared for. They're not familiar with growing cannabis. They bought those hype strains. They have, and a lot of those hype strains are super inbred. They're not mold resistant, and you're bringing them into a climate that they're not used to. And like I've seen it over and over. I got people sending me pictures that are in Oklahoma asking me what to do. And the plants are covered in PM. They're totally way too far gone, or have botrytis. I went into a grow the other day, and the guy had a bunch of huge nugs all over, and I was like, this whole room is trash. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? And I grabbed the nug and I broke it in half, and I showed him, and the whole middle was just fucking like brown. You know what I mean? And it was just like, this whole thing is just, I think a lot of people, yes, there's a ton of production, but a lot of people straight up are not even going to get to harvest. And I think a lot of people are also going to be growing really bad quality stuff, or I think you're going to get a lot of stuff that's not flushed. I think you're going to get that because people don't know they're supposed to do that. I mean, just really basic grow stuff. There was a guy who called me the other day. His plants are 7 feet tall in 5-gallon pots, and he hasn't flipped them yet. Like, it's just stuff where like, you have people that are farmers for sure, and I'm not doubting their ability to grow plants. I'm sure they grow amazing vegetables, but these people don't know cannabis, and if you don't know cannabis, you can completely ruin a really great plant, or be an amazing grower and still get horrible powdery mildew or whatever, because you don't know you're not hitting them with labs, or you're not hitting them with Bacillus subtilis or something else that's going to consume that you could still get back off the plant later on come test time. And thankfully, they don't really have any strict testing regimens. I think that's going to end up changing in August. They're going to actually start testing stuff. But right now, we're one of the only dispensaries in the state, a kind alternative down in Glenpool, Oklahoma. If you mention DGC or Growing with Fishes podcast, you get 5% off down there. So if you're in Oklahoma or in Tulsa, definitely do that. But we're only carrying probably 5% or less of the stuff that people bring us, because most of it's just bad. And that's stuff that's being sold at other places for $2,000. They're buying it for $2,000 a pound, $1,800 a pound on the lowest end. So, but it's swag, stuff that you wouldn't be able to put it on a shelf anywhere in Colorado or California. Like, we bought some Blue Dream the other day that was just no flavor, looked like it was cured in the sun, and it was just one of those where, like, this was the best looking one they had.
Well, going back to disease and stuff, some of that with the rain and the flooding is just bad luck for some of those people. But you did get to what I was going to kind of push you towards, is you have that dispensary. And I think we've been talking about, you've been turning down 80-90% of everything offered to you because it wasn't quality enough. And, and a lot of that, some of that had to do with the storms and all, but most of it had to do with the ignorance to what you have to actually do to grow that high quality cannabis that you can market, And I hate to call anybody ignorant, but that's an easy way to describe it.
A lack of experience. Lack of experience is a really big issue here too. We're seeing really poor quality cannabis come out of these large production facilities, and that's what the common folk are getting into this space or going into these stores and buying. It's just not up to par, so they end up, inevitably back on the black market. But it's a poor quality, and that's directly related to a lack of experience. What you guys are talking about.
Yep. And it's a big problem. And it's funny, like, if you know what you're doing, it's pretty easy to be successful in Oklahoma. But everyone that's actually successful is from out of state, it seems like, or has employees that are from out of state. So it's kind of funny.
So that is what Jay experiencing up in British Columbia, where he's actually got people that were good growers, but they just, because of the glut of, the oversaturation of product, they're starting to have that same issue like they did in Washington, and California. And I guess I never heard much about what's going on in Colorado. They seem to still be thriving pretty well over there, but I'm not sure. But I do know, we all know our friends on the West Coast have been suffering for a while now.
Yep. That's why I left the West Coast. We had a question from chat. It says, what's the best preventative medicine for PM or botrytis? The best way for aquaponics specifically is to make sure your silica level's up. Your silica plays a huge role in the immune system response of the plant in terms of preventing that PM and botrytis from getting established in the first place. And if your silica levels are too low, or at least your bioavailable silica levels, you will not get proper gene expression on that immune system, and you'll actually end up making the plant significantly more weaker to PM and botrytis and fusarium and all the other nasty shit that you don't want to get. That's fungally related.
And in general, go ahead, Shay. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say that was a great answer. I'm going to even go like a step before that and say pick cultivars that have proven to be resistant to powdery mildew. Kind of get more of the base of the problem instead of treating it after.
Absolutely, and sometimes you can even find phenomes within a cultivar that are a little less, a little more resistant than others. I know we've had a couple of Warlock. One of the early strains I worked heavily with doing aquaponic cannabis research was called Warlock, and it took us probably 3 different phenomes to find one that actually, really enjoyed being in aquaponics that wouldn't get PM. But if you actually suspect you have a little tiny spot of it, you can actually take what's it called? Lactobacillus from it. You can spray it with that. You can also use Bacillus subtilis. You can Serenade, or you can buy chicken probiotic. They sell it as chicken probiotic for chicks. It's the same stuff. It works really well. It just consumes fungal spores. So it's also another one that you can use that's safe, and you can get organic or non-organic certified in kind of any.
Okay, question: chicken organic or chicken probiotic? What is that?
Yeah, so Bacillus subtilis is sold in the powdered form for chicken probiotics, mainly for the treatment of pasty butt and a couple of other. I don't know the actual scientific name, but it's basically used to keep. They put it in water for chicks so they don't get sick.
Is it only for the little ones?
People do use it for adults as well, but it's primarily used for the youngins.
Only if they're like sick, right, and showing something. Like,
No. You use it off the bat. So if you have chicks, you would use it in your water to prevent disease issues in the digestive tract.
It's a proactive method, Tara. So very similar to using lactobacillus.
Oh,
you know,
very interesting. Never even heard of it, and I have chickens.
There's a product you can buy over the counter called Serenade that's actually sold for use on plants. It smells like a boys' locker room from a high school, but it works really well.
And I wanted to add to what Steve said about silica. For those of you aren't totally familiar or haven't got into K&F yet, fermented plant juice is high, and so if you're using the right plants, you'll get silica from your fermented plant juice.
Yeah.
So that's another proactive method and input you can use from natural farming.
Yeah, horsetail is really good for silica.
Yeah, yep. I got some growing out in the front. I got some singing nettles out there, but I did dandelions because I like the candy. When I'm done, I get to eat the candy.
Another little tip that we like to do during the breeding process is that we actually keep powdery mildew and botrytis in our freezer, and we'll introduce that to our mother plant, our seeded plant, and we'll let the plant actually build up a resistance to that naturally. It's kind of looking at natural systems and how we build up an immunity. So we're actually introducing to our breeding projects the pathogens that we're trying to resist against.
Can you explain how you're doing that, or is that a secret?
Sure, yeah. We just when the plant's going into flower, we'll literally rub an infected piece of bud from another project, some botrytis or powdery mildew. We'll actually try and infect the plant with it.
Oh, I thought we lost you for a second. Your head froze.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're having a pretty bad lightning and hailstorm here. You might be able to hear it in the background.
So after you rub it on there and try to actually infect the plant, what do you do then? What is your procedure after that?
Just let it run through till the seeds are done. I mean, we're trying to develop resistance. Think of it as we would take an injection. What's that called?
Flu shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's what the whole point is to do it while you're growing the seeds, to allow it to be in for the plant to be infected by it. It'll put it in the seeds and thus supposedly make it the
plant will start developing resistance to it, especially after a few generations. You do that a few generations, it's usually successful.
That's interesting. That's really cool. Yeah.
The other one I like a lot, aside from silica or horsetail, if you're going to do ferments specifically for those, is fermented rice husks. That's another really good one, specifically.
Yeah, that's another advantage to using the rice hull as instead of perlite in our soil. As it breaks down, there's definitely a ton of silica in it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm working towards. Well, go ahead. I was just going to say I was working towards that, but I've always bought my perlite at 440 pounds at a time, and I still got about 350 pounds of it. But I hadn't really been using it because I'm going into the regenerative. And I've had friends that have been doing it a long time advise me against using the perlite because it settles, and then you end up with this perlite layer across the bottom of your grow. Which is harder to penetrate. I think that's how it was explained to me. So I like that rice husk. Got to see how much I can get them for. Yeah.
There's nothing worse than going to a house and the whole yard is just full of perlite because they've been recycled or dumping their soil between crops outside. You got 3 feet of perlite on the whole property. That's another advantage of us reusing our soils.
And I'm trying to shift from ProMix too, for the same reasoning, shifting from ProMix to cocoa is so expensive to me compared to ProMix, but at least with all my ProMix that I use, I always recycle it. So the biggest hit on Pro Mix is that taking the peat bogs and ruining the peat bogs. But since I've been using it for so long, at least I'm not wasting it. Like I'm not just throwing it out. I'm going to build a culture using that. When I grow plants in it, then I can dump it in my hugel beds or whatever, and reuse it as part of the structure there. So I know Steve wanted to say something. I keep jumping in, but we got such a live conversation going on. It's cool.
No, it's all good. I was just gonna say, does anybody have anything else they wanted to ask Che? Any other questions from chat?
There was one question back up I saw. Wait a minute. It was about runoff. ppm runoff. Did you already get that one? I'm sorry.
I don't recall us talking about
What should ppm runoff be if feeding 1200 ppm during flower?
I have no idea. Not my.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't answer that.
Can you repeat the question? Because we talk about runoff all the time at our website.
What should...
If he's feeding at 1200 ppms in flower, what should his runoff be?
Oh, well, that's going to be that. You can't necessarily answer that. It depends on what you got in your pot. That'll cause it to change on the way through in the pH.
Yeah, that's kind of a really complicated question.
Yeah,
there's more things we need to know to answer that.
So. I will say one thing about people using runoff to judge. I feel like it's being misused in a lot of ways. I think people. I talked to a guy the other day. He goes, well, I flushed my pots last week, and then I did this, and he's not even giving. He's giving them way too low nutrients. Then he flushed his nutrients, and he's giving them like 200 parts per million. He's wondering why he's having deficiencies, and then he was going to plan on flush his pot again. And I said, why are you doing that? The only time, here's my opinion, and I could be wrong, but this is my opinion for all my years of growing. I do not use testing runoff unless I'm having a problem. I let my plants tell me if I need to do a flush, that I need to measure the ppm or the pH of the runoff, and I let the plant tell me that. If my plants look healthy, the last thing I want to do is flush all the minerals out of the pot. And that's what too many people are getting into. Every time they think they're supposed to do a runoff check, by flushing their medium over and over and over, and that's where your problems are coming at. That's my opinion. Maybe somebody else would like to address that.
I guess his battery died or something. He is CheGrown on, just in case he doesn't come back. So we had that problem with Ben Ripster last week. His phone just overheated and he needed to let it cool down. So Che can be found at CheGrown at Instagram.
There we go.
Hey guys.
Well, hey, in case you cut off again, how do we find you? That's what Steve was explaining. Easier for you to do it.
Sure. Yeah, you can get me at Che at Rosebud Cannabis Farms, CheGrown on Instagram, and Rosebud Cannabis Farms on all the different social media platforms. Check out our website, rosebudcannabisfarms.ca.
Cool. That's cool. Yeah. We didn't know if you'd be back, as you said you were having a storm, pretty good storm out there too, and that could do it.
Yeah.
That could do it.
All right. So we have one or two questions left. Is there any other strains you recommend for the Okanagan or Kootenays?
Seaweed's Old Faithful. Everybody knows about it by now, but it's just tried, tested, and true. Polecat, it's a real late finisher, but it's super resistant, super hardy to frost and cold. In fact, most people don't harvest it until it gets hit by snow on the 1st of November. Again, the apricot kush, it's really starting to take over a lot of the outdoor production. It's got really nice golf ball buds, really nice apricot kush taste going on. So that's become really popular. And then our genetics, we're working on an ice cream haze, which is what we call semi-auto. It's got Ruderellus incorporated into it, a September finisher. We've also got a Chem 91 Auto crossed with Rosetta Stone from Duke Diamond, and that's turning out amazing. The male is one of the nicest males I've actually ever seen for plant structure. The flower pods were so tight on it. From a distance, it looks like big colas. It looks like a female. And you get up close and you realize, no, those are actually male flowers. It's turning out really well as well. We're excited about a lot of the projects we're working with, but those two are right at the forefront.
Right.
That's pretty cool about the flood. I've seen pictures of that where there's been snow on floods before, and it didn't appear that they were panicking, but they knew that it was time, So to have something resistant like that, I bet the Michigan growers and the Maine growers would love to know about those strains. I'm gonna have to watch this later on and make sure I get the names of those to pass on to some of our friends up north and in the East Coast.
There's some other ones. BC Blueberry is a pretty good one. We're incorporating that. But again, all these strains, for the most part, have Ruderellus in them, and that's how we're able to get them finished before the harsh winter comes up here.
So did you breed those yourself with the Ruderellus, or did you pick it? Well, I know some of them you didn't because you just said they're from this place or that place. But how many did you make your own, or are you just now making your own?
We've been breeding for a long time. My father had a lot of genetics, 30, 40 years ago he was working with. And so we've built some stuff off of that. But to tell you the truth, for the most part, it's a big advantage to take somebody's already, successful project and then continue that forward. I mean, we don't want to rip anybody off. We want to get far enough away from the original that it can be called our own. But it sure saves a lot of time. And there's so many breeders out there now. You get these really exceptional things popping up. And it's a big advantage to start with that instead of from scratch. But some of our older stuff, we've actually incorporated some autoflower into seaweed about 10 years ago. But most of this modern stuff is just 4 or 5 steps removed from other breeders' work. And then we've added our own little flair to it. Mephisto, if you're into autoflower, they're really top notch, in my opinion. They're leading the autoflower movement at this point. I'd highly recommend checking them out.
Yeah, there's a couple, 3 people out there. Jeff Lowenfels are getting into it heavy, and oh shoot, what was that younger fella we had on that's big time into autoflowers that had the where Josh went and did a show with him a couple weeks ago. But
Shango.
Shango.
Yeah, he does autos, and then Jeff Lowenfeld's actually going to be on the show here soon to talk to us about that. So.
Cool. Yeah, I just heard him on Tad Hussey on Kiss Organics talking about the autoflower thing. Completely agree. There's other advantages to autoflower too. You can harvest in succession instead of that big workload at the end of the season. Your first harvest is really high quality, probably comparable to indoor. And of course, you're going to get quicker to money. You're going to be able to reap some rewards earlier in the summer before the market's flooded. So there are a lot of advantages to working with autoflower.
I think the key to autoflower, in my experience, is that it needs to be sun grown. Indoors, to me, I just quit growing it indoors. I have no use for it indoors. It takes up space where I can get much higher yield. But everybody I've seen that did it outdoors, I could say, okay, I could be happy with that plant, But I've never got one to finish in under 110 days either. They have all these claims about 90 days, and well, I harvest by trichomes generally, and I've never had one anywhere near ready at 90 days. But so it's basically, I found it for me indoors, it was the same amount of time, almost.
I have an auto in Jamaica called 47. A lot of the guys grow up in Orange Hill, and that one finishes in around 50 days.
Wow. Oh, and that's where your photo period is more like 12-12 though. Natural photo period with the sun is 12-12 there. So that's another thing. The shorter photo periods, like growing.
Right. Yeah, we're getting some of this stuff to finish in 70 days under 24 hours.
What? That must be strong Ruderellus traits. Then.
I don't know. I disagree with doing 24-hour personally. I think there's certain I'd love to see someone do a comparison of chemobars with like a dozen strains.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's
there's some
autos though because you can't take clones.
Yeah.
Well, I've had people.
There's some advantages.
Go ahead, Jay. Go ahead, but because it was addressed to you anyway. So yeah.
Oh, no problem. I'm cutting in and out a little bit, but there's some advantages I think to 24-hour light as well. Like for example, you have a lot less intensive lighting, so which opens up that possibility to people that want to grow with the LED strips and things like that, and actually have a really high quality harvest, you're still getting the total amount of intake, light intake over that period, even with a half or less of the light.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I hadn't heard that point before. That's awesome. So what's been going on with your grow this week?
Sorry, you talking to me, Steve?
Yeah, what's been going on with your grow this week?
We're just doing a lot of transplanting. We got a lot of company stuff going on in Calgary, and I'm just headed back home to the Kootenays tomorrow. But we're a little bit behind. We'd like to be transplanted normally by now, so we got a lot of that going on. And then we're taking clones off of everything, numbered clones, so that we can sex them and also pick our keepers. We're going to do some feminized work, and so we're going to pick the best females of the batch to use as our donor plants. And the way we find that is by cloning them numbered clones and flowering out the clones. In fact, we even root the clones in 12 and 12, so it doesn't take long at all to know what you got.
Awesome. Yeah, I know it's definitely something I like to do too, is rooting in 12-12.
One thing I was going to say a minute ago was I've had friends that we say you can't clone autos, and they did, but we still believe that the plant's going to be at the end, and eventually it's going to the quality is going to continue to deteriorate. But they did clone successfully, so they wanted to argue about that. So I didn't. Basically, I just said it's still the clone is we all know the clone is the age of the mother. Genetically the same age as the mother. So if it's predisposed to grow for 90 days, if you take a clone and you take another clone from that, we think that it's going to eventually deteriorate to where, and I don't think they got the yield off the clones. But so you can, if anybody wants to argue out there, you can actually take cuttings from autoflowers and they will root and grow, but it's not advised.
It's going to take the age of the parent material the same way a fruit tree does. It's just going to finish right away and it's not going to grow.
Yeah, that's been our experience with it. Yeah. Have you heard about this tissue culture though? How now I can't confirm this. This has just been presented to me. We're on a phone call next week about this, but how we can actually reset the internal clock of the autoflower cultivar by putting it into a tissue culture. Have you heard anything about that?
No, and I kind of lost interest with tissue culture when I learned how easy it is to culture viruses and lots of other stuff. So it just seems like if you had a really specific reason to do it, it seems like awesome, but it seems like a heavy investment to clean up all the cultivars that you want to use to begin with. Even if you're starting from seed, a lot of cultivars have a lot of junk in them that you have to clean up before you can even, you have to clean them up 6 to 10 times. We had a couple of other people on the show talk about this. Kevin Jodry talked about it. I think Kevin McKernan talked about it. I'm trying to remember who else talked about it when they were on the show. Alan talked about it as well. From PFA, and Bokashi. So this is the kind of stuff that it's really cool for sure. But you need to have really clean lines, and it generally takes quite a bit of money to clean those up before you can actually work with them, generally 10 grand or more to clean up most of these cultivars to the point where you can heavily use them in tissue culture with predictability.
That's a good point.
I kind of I was consulting on a major grow op that was trying to build up in British Columbia, as a matter of fact. And I kind of fell out of it for two reasons. He started out wanting to use seeds for everything, and he wouldn't let me convince him that you need to get good cultivars and then take clones for your giant grow. And then all of a sudden he wanted to use tissue culture, and then I found out that I'm an American, so I couldn't work on the farm anyway, so I got out. But otherwise, I may be a little more well versed in tissue culture, but I still like. I'm at the age where I'm still a little old school. I like a lot of the new stuff, but I still like the old stuff, and I think that's why I got the love with natural farming too, because it's old stuff. And I like to make things myself, and I'm one of those people that I'm trying to prepare for when the lights go out. When the lights go out, I'll still be able to feed myself and grow pot without electricity. So, even though we have wind power and solar power, You know, that's the way I look at things. And I'm not sure how you'd be running this tissue culture if the grid goes down, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry, just some goofy shit.
Yeah, tell us more about it, though. Tissue culture for autos.
Sorry, say that again, Steve.
Tell us more about the tissue culture for autos.
Well, I'm not exactly sure. This isn't my specialty. This is just information that's been passed down to me. But we're on a phone call next week, some people that are doing this, and they claim that, like I say, they can actually take a piece of plant material even at the end of the cycle. So we can go through, run out a whole bunch, sift through them, find your keeper, and actually just take a piece of that plant material, put it back to the tissue culture, and apparently it resets the clock. I was a little bit doubtful of that, but it sounds like it's actually happening. So this way they can reproduce an indefinite number of the same cultivar, just like we would with the normal cloning process, and then start it fresh again.
And some of the claims have been that it would actually be less expensive because of the, you know, the way they go about doing that. Again, it's a new thing. So, you know, I can't wait to hear what you find out with your phone call. And I want to throw something out there before we get rushed or something at the end of the show. If you're into like the auto flowers and you're into Jeff Lowenfeld's, you know, when Steve sends out links every week, you're always welcome to pop back in and be part of the show and hang out too.
Right on. I'd love that.
So if there's we got the maximum of 10 people that can join. So if you see that thing come up where Jeff Lowenfeld's going to be on the show, you can go to your email and pop it, or wherever you get your link from, and you could pop in and be part of the discussion.
Yeah, that'd be great. Jeff Lowenfeld is another one of my heroes, so I'd be honored.
So I tell you, did anybody follow up with any other questions in chat? Or?
So it takes a long time to grow a plant from a stem cell, right?
It does, yeah.
Like how long, do you know? Like, I'm sure it varies, but I'm just curious.
No, I'm not exactly sure. We're just starting to play with it ourselves. Like, you know, we're thinking 4 to 6 weeks before we're getting to the point we can start hardying it off. But that's just our own experience and very limited experience. So I probably shouldn't even comment to that.
Hey, no big. It's all right. I have no clue. I was just curious since we were on the subject. Gonna have to check it out.
Yeah, cool.
Alrighty. What's up with you and your garden, Tara, this week?
Oh, I was just out doing chopping and dropping. Is that what you call it? When you cut everything down around it and try and clear it all out? Yeah, I'm trying to learn how to do all that. Yeah, just clearing weeds out and trying to clean stuff up. That's all I really got. Oh, I got roots on the variegated plant that I took from Josh. And so I have roots on one of them. So I don't know. We'll see. And with what else? The mullein is huge out behind my house. I've got to take some pictures. Like, it is like, my husband says it's like a mullein jungle back there, and yarrow is growing crazy everywhere. It's because we normally don't water back behind there, and I've decided to water that whole area because I want to have a goose pen up there for all my geese and my 3 geese. And so it's just a jungle. Like the mullein is just crazy wild.
Awesome.
I hear that's good for silica too on the FPJs.
Mullein, I would steer clear of mullein and yarrow as they're very antimicrobial. So
okay, so that's like some people are saying yes and some people are no. So I'm hearing both.
Well, I can make an antibiotic out of it, so I'm not going to use it for probiotic gardening. It seems a little goofy to me. I would use comfrey. Comfrey would be a much better replacement.
Well, I don't have that growing out there, darn it.
Comfrey's one, man. Comfrey will take off just like the mullein does. You get that started, it'll race through.
Oh, really? Okay. I'll have to get some comfrey then. I don't have comfrey.
I think there's just so many great cultivars that were already sold on, like the horsetail and the singing nettles and the dandelion and even thistle. thistle is great to be used for fermented plant juice too.
Oh.
And if you're a devil worshiper and your yard is full of thistle, like everybody claims that'll happen to you if well, I don't know why I'm going off on the thinner thing tonight, but
you don't want thistle. Thistle, that is russet mites are attracted to thistle. Stay away from thistle. I cleaned it all. But I did get in a fight with a stinging nettle tonight. Right there, you can see kind of like a spot. And then up here, this looks amazing better. I can't believe it actually fell on the thing while I was trimming it. And I came in, I rushed in right away, put cold water on it, and then I put this cannabis cream on that I made. This is like all of my my squished rosin chips that I did, and I put them in a crock pot and cooked it like for 3 days with coconut oil. And I slapped that right on there, and it took the welt and the stinging right away. I can't believe how good it feels. I'm so shocked. Cool. The stinging nettle welts me up. I am like huge swollen normally.
That's interesting. I didn't know that happened, and I noticed mine starting to bud or flower or whatever because it just looked like a bunch of little wires sticking up. And I noticed today that it's got a bunch of tiny little foliage on it, but with my eyes, it was a little harder.
Well, okay, so they seem to be, when they are seeded, they seem to be super more potent than when they are before they bud. Because when I've touched them before and I've run into them, and they normally aren't this bad. And today was like really bad. So I don't know if that's true. Maybe more terpene, whatever. I don't even know what the thing is what it is that stings you. I don't even know.
Might simply be an allergy.
Could be.
But it works quickly. What's up with you and your garden there, Robert?
Well, are you talking to me? Because there's something going on with the audio right now. Also.
There we go. What's up with you, Roger?
Oh, well, it's funny. I was looking at my stinging nettles today, and they're doing really well. My horsetail's going crazy. I got to repot a bunch of vegetables and stuff like that. I'm in love with my dwarf banana plants. They're just blowing me away with what they're doing. But I'm feeling really good because I was late to the show tonight, and I never miss a show. But at 9 o'clock, I've been trying to get somebody to come out here and help me because I'm deathly allergic to hornets and stuff. And I got a lot of growth back in the back, this time of year in the swamp, where I've got tons of green plants like Tara's jungle, that all kinds of weeds and stuff. And there's all kinds of hornets and bees. Not all of them will kill me, but some of them will. And I'm trying to take back over the back area and clean up my greenhouse, but I can't do it without, since I'm alone, I can't do it without having assistance or a helper or somebody helping me do it to watch my back in case I do get stung. We can get to the hospital in time. So I actually had a friend of mine that's given me a ride a couple times to the store call me and tell me today that her son and his wife and their baby are being run off where they live because of a confrontation with the landlord, and they want to park a camper over on my land, and he'd help me out anyway, and he's self-employed, and he does contracting and stuff, and so I think I'm really happy. That's why I was late. I'm super happy. I truly believe I found an honorable young man with a young baby and a wife that want to come out here and have a place to stay and get on their feet, and in turn they're going to help me turn my farm around and to give me that labor. And I need, what I need more than labor, I just need somebody to watch my ass, because I almost died from a hornet a long time ago, and I mean I was just like seconds from death. I really don't want to experience that again, so I'm very happy.
Maybe you should have an EpiPen.
Well, I do have EpiPens, but that doesn't keep you alive necessarily. You still have to go to the hospital. If you can't drive, it's a long way to the hospital.
Yeah, that's true.
You got to get your steroid injection, and it's funny when they gave me the Epi, they gave me immediate because that's what opens up your throat. Because when you get going to anaphylactic shock, it feels like those weed things you see on TV at night where they got the curled claws on the bottom and the handles like handlebars, and they stick them in the ground on the weed and they twist it and rip the weed out. Well, anaphylactic shock feels like somebody pierced your chest with one of those and start twisting on it, and then your throat starts closing up where you can't breathe. And so you got this real, you're in trouble because your chest is tightening up, and it's just painful like a heart attack, and then your throat's tightening up, and at some point you can't breathe anymore. So it's just the fact that, so yes, I know all the EpiPens and Benadryls, but here's the interesting thing. I've still not gotten anybody to give me a reason for this. They didn't give me the Benadryl shot till they got me in the ambulance, and I'm not sure if that's because maybe you could be allergic to Benadryl or what, but they gave me that epinephrine, and they hooked me up to an IV, and they injected me with some steroids, but then they never gave me the Benadryl shot, which was 25 milligrams, if I recall, until they actually had me on the ambulance. And then, of course, I went down and sat in the emergency room for a few hours. They wanted to see if I would, go back into shock or whatever like that. And but I'm just saying, that's the reason why. So I'm super happy. If he shows up tomorrow for work, I'm going to be as happy as I've been in about 5 years. Having somebody to come out here, and first thing we're going to do is I'm actually going to put some of my farming aside, and the first thing we're going to do is go clear a space between the well and the electrical box for him to put his camper, and have a place to, just to be on the land. And I'm going to take a chance, because I'm not one of those kind of people that really want people to come out and be on my land, but I know his mom's a hardworking woman, and she's got a master's in psychology, and she works, she's really nice person. And she asked me to help out her son, and he came over immediately as soon as I called him. And once he realized I called him, that's why I was late anyway. So I apologize for being late to the show for all you people out there that love me so much, but the thing is I was out there talking with a fella that's going to help me out, and I might even have some cool stuff to tell you about my farm here in the near future. But
Great. Awesome.
Everything's going great.
So we've just been prepping out here for the outdoor, trying to get that all in. We have about a little over a half acre. We've got about 800 plants we're going to be putting it in. So we were just mowing everything down today, getting everything prepped, we're going to end up putting everything up on pallets and bags because there was some stuff sprayed in January, and we're going to make sure we wait our 180 days before we even consider putting anything in the ground. So we're going to go ahead and put them up in 100-gallon pots and, do some companion planting for this year. And then we're going to switch everything over to hugel beds in the fall. Once the plants come down over the winter, we're going to build up hugels all winter time.
That's going to
get them inoculated. So
awesome.
And that's what I'm also doing. We'll be doing I'm trying to get my hugel bed finished. So I'm going to be working. Since I have help, I'll be able to do that, Steve. I'll be able to drag a whole bunch of wood out of the back part of the property that's been laying there after hurricanes. It's all dry. It should make an awesome hugel bed. So.
Yeah, and then we've been just trying to get everything else. We had to move some buildings around because of some issues we found underground. When we actually went to dig some foundations, there were some things that were going to make it a lot harder. So we decided to shift some stuff around a couple of feet to make things easier. And so we got that all going. We know what all of our floor plans are. So just kind of getting everything finalized with the build and getting everything ordered. So making sure we got the last of our plants all ready to go. So we'll see. So it'll be a lot of fun, and we'll have a lot more content in the next, next week we'll have all the outdoor plants going out. We'll have a lot of outdoor content. And then probably 2 to 4 weeks after that, we'll have the indoor stuff starting to go up. The nursery might even be ready here in the next 2 weeks. So, everything's kind of really going quickly now that we got most of the gear there. It's just kind of as fast as we can put it together. It's a lot of fun.
Right on. Exciting times.
Isn't it funny? You make a plan and then you start to dig, and then you find you can't dig there, or that's weird.
When you dig in, you find a spring that you didn't know was there. So you never know what you find when you're digging. So we had to change some of our design, but it worked out just fine, and no big deal. So
yeah.
Alrighty. Well, why don't you tell everybody how to find you there, Che?
Yeah, just like you say, Rosebud Cannabis Farms. We're on all social media platforms and the website. And then you can get me on Instagram. You can follow what we're up to in our personal production license under CheGrown, CheGrown. You'll recognize the beard.
Awesome. And what about you, Roger?
You can find me at ilovegrowingmarijuana.com, which is my home base, and I opened up a couple accounts on Instagram and Facebook under Roger Latewood.
Cool. And what about you, Tara?
Tara Lee Live on YouTube and Tara Lee Live on Instagram. And I might be having an interview come up this weekend. Some people contacted me and said they wanted to get some information out. So stay tuned. I don't know yet.
Speaking of which, I forgot to mention too, shout out to Scotty and the Do Grow Show. I was just over on their show today, doing some recording. I don't know any idea when that's going to actually be aired, but we recorded a really awesome episode today and talked about Oklahoma and all the different crazy stuff going on. So be sure to check that out. And,
awesome. That's cool, Steve.
Yeah. You can find me on Ponics on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, all the different places. We'll catch you guys again next week. So Tuesday, we're going to do another really awesome, cool powwow episode. We're going to have Sun-Grown Mids. We're going to have Dale Hunt. We're going to have Beth Schechter. And we're going to have a couple of other people. We're going to talk about, everybody knows about all the bullshit that happened with Phylos. Like, what has happened in the last few months to move things in the right direction? And what are some of the things that growers, what has happened, post Phylos fuckery in terms of, protecting breeders and how things have changed. So we were hoping to get Kevin McKernan on to join us for that too, but he's going to be in Italy and going to be 3:30 in the morning when we start the episode, so he's not going to be able to join us. But
you said Beth is going to be on Tuesday?
Yeah, so Beth from Open Cannabis Project.
Right, that's what I wanted, Open Cannabis Project. Okay.
And Sun-Grown Mids, the guy who's put out a lot of work into trying to move this thing forward. Those two people, him and Beth, have put out the most amount of ideas more than anybody else. And Beth has put a hell of a lot of work into trying to put something together that's tangible that people can use. And Dale's been a large part of that as well. So it's going to be a really cool episode and one you're not going to want to miss. So we'll see you guys on Tuesday. All right. Take care.
Good night,
Thanks a lot
everybody.
for having us.